Well, I got to say to you guys that to have both of you intelligence people here with top secret clearances and everything that you guys go through, that makes me feel a little small. And I'm a chubby guy. So for me to feel a little small, it's a little tough right now in order to be able to have you guys come on and make this absolutely happen. But, Bob, I want to ask you, because you're someone who comes from a governmental scientific side, and Cheryl and I have a lot in common with the journalism side on this. So I'm curious, from an outsider's perspective, what is your opinion of the way journalism and journalists have handled this field?
They basically haven't. I mean, until Leslie Kean and Blumenthal came, just kind of really blew the door open. There weren't many really well-known mainstream journalists writing about it. I mean, Leslie Kean wrote a book on UFOs and the generals, etc., and then wrote articles. And she was, of course, known to be Bud Hopkins' significant other, and Blumenthal had an interest for a long time. Blumenthal wrote the foreword, I think, to Cheryl's book on the statistics and ufology, and they've been interested. But besides them, there have been very few. Recently, we've had forgetting his name. Anyway, I'll dredge it up and remember it. But we've had a few more. And of course, George Knapp is in a really unique position. But to cover a subject as broad, diverse, as internationally diverse as it is now, you got to have more than 3 or 4 journalists inside the United States covering this actively to do it justice.
I agree 100%.
Cheryl, the journalism side of everything, and you and I talked about this first about a year and a half ago on this show, but the journalism side of everything, the way everything seems to be happening so fast these days, I've expressed and been very public about my concerns with the way journalism has been handled, not so much on a mainstream side, even though I have strong opinions about that, but on the alternative side here. Are we doing enough to cover this subject? Do we have the right people doing as such?
I think so. Recently, I joined the team over at UAPresearch.com. And they gave me a venue. My newspaper went out of business last year, so I had to. I've been kind of groping around trying to find an outlet. And UAP Research, you introduced me to Joel, and I started working with them. And I'll tell you, what's very difficult. And I admin and monitor a couple of the groups, like on Facebook. And one of the problems I see is you can put a really good article up there, but if it doesn't have a nice, big, colorful alien or some really kind of jazzed out UFO art on there, nobody sees it. Okay. And that's one of the problems we're fighting out in social media, plus the algorithms, like things like Facebook has and things like this, starts being driving down the smart stuff, and all the woo-woo stuff gets all the visibility. And it's really, really a shame, because there's a bit of good research being done out there. But there was a discussion going over on one of the other boards tonight, and Leslie made a comment. Someone made a comment about the fact that the people who own the databases haven't done much with the information. And she made the comment that was myself and Tom Conwell were the only people doing the statistics. Well, when I say myself, me and Linda and Tom Conwell are the only people doing the statistical information. So it's the word's slowly getting out there, but it's strange.
Okay, so Cheryl, just tell us how you got into your relationship with the Syracuse New Times, and how that went a long time until, of course, as you said, it folded. Tell us the process where you got into that.
Okay, well, I worked for a different newspaper, but I worked in the technical department. I literally made the plates every night, okay, and to make the newspaper. and I was a backup electronic technician on duty. So when all I had to do once the presses got running for 2 hours was sit back and I could read the news online, that kind of thing. And on November 5th, 2012, there was a little sidebar article on CNN.com that said, a little 100-word story. UFOs have been declining since the 1980s. Maybe they were always just an urban legend. And I said, huh? That doesn't sound right. And like I said, I wasn't an expert, but I was well read. So for the first time in my life, I went out to the National UFO Reporting Center website, dug down into the pages, got some year-end totals, and put them in a spreadsheet. And the things went to the right and up like a rocket. And I'm going, what memo did the UFOs get? And that was that. So I started reading some of the reports. I'd never seen other people's UFO reports before. And I thought I was going to see what I thought to be whack job reports. And I saw a lot of reports that were very sincere, people who said, I never believed in this stuff until my wife and I saw this thing tonight, And so I started taking some of these accounts, especially the verbose ones, and I started punching up the stories a little bit. And I started going around to some other editors at other newspapers. In fact, I pitched the newspaper I worked for, and they laughed me out of the office. And I got laughed out of the office by a whole bunch of editors. And then I got escorted to the door by security. And then I went over and called a guy by the name of Larry Dietrich, who had been a senior copy editor at the Post Standard where I worked, and he had been picked up as the editor-in-chief at this little weekly. So I made an appointment with him. I came in and went to sit down and talk to him about, I had 4 paper slides to show him. And he said, before we look at that, let's have a cup of coffee. We sat there with a cup of coffee, and he told me his history with UFOs, and we're about the same age, and he basically had a similar history to me, read all the stuff, Frank Edwards, all those kinds of people back in the 60s and 70s. And bottom line, it was we were on the same page, and he looked at me and said, I can't write this, but I'm sympathetic, and let's try this. He'd try you out for a month. Okay, he called me up a month later, said, come on over, I got to talk to you. I thought, well, that was it. This is over. I get over there to talk to him, and I walk into the office. There's this meeting going on. He points at me and says, there's our rock star. And my column, at only 4 weeks old, was pulling more page views than all the columnists combined. So that launched a very nice 7 years with the Syracuse New Times. And it was a lot of fun, and we had planned to go further, but the board shut us down. So,
oh, that's interesting. Just as an aside, my father owned, operated, and was the editor-in-chief of the Clark County Democrat in Clark County, Alabama.
Oh my gosh!
Until he and I did, I knew the typesetter, and when they went to offset printing, none of them could run a computer or anything like it. And I had been a computer nut since I was 15 or 16. So I helped them do all the computer stuff when they went to offset printing. So my father died in 1987. That was the end of my relationship with the newspaper business.
Well, at a point, the statistics side of it, as I started writing weekly articles, you had to have something to write about. So New York State was my beat. So I was starting to add up things. I'd go on to the MUFON site and I'd get numbers out of their CMS system, things like this. And I would add them up for certain cities and counties and things like this. And eventually, like the second year or third year I was doing things there at the New Times, I went ahead and did a study of every single county in New York State. And we started showing the numbers around to some of the upstate, some of the people who had been around for years doing the, former MUFON directors, that kind of thing. And they said, we didn't know there was a pattern there. We didn't know there was a pattern there either. And this was around October of 2015. And Linda and I sat there over a beer and said, at our pub and said, hey, look at all this cool stuff we found in New York State. What if we did the whole country like we just did for New York State? And we sat there and stared at each other for 20 minutes. We figured it'd take a year. It took 18 months. And that's how we got into the UFO statistics business.
Oh, that's terrific. Tell me a little bit about the New York Skies Project.
New York Skies Project. Well, the idea with my column was just write, articles that were related to New York State for the most part. For the first 5 years, that's all I did was New York State stories. And I would dig back, and the attitude we had was, one, we would never out anybody. So instead of the who, what, when, where, why, if I knew why, I would get the editor and I agreed I would probably be getting a Nobel Prize. And if I can't tell you, most of the UFO things, we don't know the name of anybody. And even if I did, we decided we weren't going to out them because of the stigma. So we agreed on what, when, and where. So if you read one of my stories and it said Bob and Susie were on the hood of his Dodge, I made up the Dodge and I made up Bob and Susie. But New York State was my beat, and so we did everything we could possibly do to reveal stories that nobody had been reporting in New York State.
So it sounds to me like you had other people helping, researchers and so forth, in the New York Skies Project. Approximately how big did it get?
Me, myself, and I.
Okay, I was wondering if you were doing that entire load all by yourself. Wow, that's amazing, Dave.
Oh, that makes very much sense to me. When you're on your own on a beat, and you are having to cover it, you do everything. You really have to do everything, and that effort needs to be commended because it is hard work gathering. But I want to ask you, Cheryl, because you are a storyteller, being a journalist by trade.
Right.
Why go with the statistics side?
Okay, as we started adding things up and we started seeing patterns, we thought that these patterns were going to lead to something, and they have. In a big way. And we had, so this is when Linda got deep into it with me. She's got all the science degrees. Me, I've got the arts and entertainment and journalism side of it. Top hat and the cane. She's got the science degrees. So she kept me very honest. She said, we're going to do it this way, this way, this way. We're going to do a UFO census. And she gave me ground rules to go by. And every time I ran up against a snag, we'd sit down over a cup of coffee and talk it out. So she was the guiding, what do you call it when in a scientific paper, there's always the senior scientist at the top of the paper. She was the senior scientist on the top of the paper, but she doesn't have a tendency to want to go out and do radio shows and talk at conferences and things.
I was going to ask you about that because we always hear about Linda. We never get to hear her voice.
Oh, I'll give you one example. Last year, the commander over on KGRA, Commander Cobra, had insisted on having her on. So we set her up one night, and he got a very different kind of interview because she shoots from the hip with two machine guns, and it was a very different kind of interview. But she did it from the viewpoint of this UFO business needs more science. And we both have the attitude of, hey, 175 years ago, people didn't believe in germ theory either. It was a fringe science and a medical science. In 1939, if you wanted to study rocketry and you told your polytechnical professor that's what you wanted to do, they'd laugh you out of the class. The Germans didn't, but our American scientists did. Not thought of here mentality. And UFOs are probably just suffering from the same thing. 2017 was a disclosure year, and people don't think it was. Okay, early part of the year, it was the Obama era disclosure with the CIA declassifying a bunch of documents, and some of the CIA UFO documents were in there. 3 months later, the New York Times does a huge Science magazine article about our statistics book. And then 6, 7, 8 months later, December 16th, Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean and the folks over at Politico revealed a big thing about ATIP, okay? And since that time, they've done some other really huge stories. So that was a big disclosure year. And, of course, the UFO community wants to drink from the fire hose. They wanted more. They want the cracked up starship in the mall parking lot. They want the dead bleeding alien on the pavement, and the government's been giving it to us in drips, as you know.
Very, very big drips. Yeah. Brian Bender was the person over at Politico whose name I couldn't remember. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. I couldn't remember his name either.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So look, a lot of people just don't have a clue how many sightings you are able to speak to. And so even when a debunker comes along, you go through some math that says, okay, let's just suppose all of these are bad. Right after the break, let's come back and go through that so our audience gets armed with that kind of knowledge. And we'll go through it carefully so our listeners are armed with that kind of knowledge and they can make the same kind of argument. And then your book is a reference.
My recommendation when we come back while they're at break, get your diapers on because we're going to scare the snot out of you.
That's good. That's exactly what we want. Dave?
Well, we have about 2 minutes here before we have to go to break. And, Cheryl, I want to ask you, in regards to the statistics, why has a study like yours been so infrequently done in the UFO world?
I don't know. There's been a lot of good technical people, engineers and things like this. But when you think about it, a newspaper reporter talked to me the other day, and he said, I told him I was revamping the database from 2001 to 2018 before I merged 2019 and 2020 into it. He said, well, how long did that take? I said, 650 hours. He said, who spends 650 hours fixing a database? But that's the kind of work it takes if you want to be meticulous about this thing and not be slipshod.
Is it pride, though? Is that what it is because you're a professional?
Yes, that too. The book we want to generate this year, which we're getting ready to do, we needed to have the information precise. And one of the biggest problems was the cities that people logged on the UFO sightings, both in New Fork and MUFON, people don't know how to spell their city.
Right.
Yeah. But they're journalists.
They certainly don't have good editors.
No.
Well, no, this is just in the databases. In anybody logging a UFO sighting, a lot of people don't spell them right. And one of the things we discovered while we were cleaning up the database, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania has the worst spelling for the names of cities in the UFO database of any county in the United States. Of 3,200 counties, they were the worst.
And on that note, I'm going to get you guys to hold on because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Science Bob and Friends, we have scientist Bob McGwier and renowned journalist, award-winning journalist Cheryl Costa as we continue on with statistics in ufology. Get ready because there's some impressive numbers coming up. All right, guys, we're clear.
Okay. Oh, that's terrific.
That's a good half hour.
That was a perfect segue into let's get down to some numbers. So, Cheryl, when we come back, what I want you to do, if you can, please, I'm going to ask a question. But the gist of what I want to start the thing with is when you did your first book, there were like 150,000 or whatever it was eyewitness accounts that went into some statistics you were doing. Right. So you've done other years and the numbers have changed. So let's go over the numbers and then let's make the argument. If you do the usual culling, how many are worth looking at?
Okay,
so let's do that for people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
Oh, by the way, Cheryl, I forgot to tell you, Science Bob and I had an event together last week.
Oh, did we ever? And weirdness around it.
Really?
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I woke up in the middle of the night or in the morning, and it felt like I knew I went to sleep. I remember falling asleep, and I woke up in the morning, and I felt like I didn't sleep a drop, or a wink, I guess, would be the proper lingo on that. And
they worked your butt off.
And I remember 3 Grays being there. I remember Science Bob being there. I remember a buddy of mine named Olaf Phillips being there. A couple other ufologists being there. And
listen, Dave calls me And he says, you know, I had the weirdest dream, or I was taken, and in this dream or taking, you were there. And I says, I don't have any memory of this, but I really was tired this morning. So I went and got my Fitbit app and looked at my Fitbit app, and it said that I had been awake an hour and a half in the middle of the night, and I have no memory of being awake.
Isn't that fun?
It's hilarious.
Now, the recommendation is make sure you get one of those $12 UV flashlights they sell on on Amazon, a good bright one.
Yeah.
And have your loved one check you over for little iridescent dots on you after one of these events.
Okay. All right.
Trust me.
Oh yeah. So we had an event where. Okay, so let's say I'm looking due south with my doorbell camera, and the sun at the time, it was 4:45 in the afternoon, so it's far in the west. There was a really bright light above my pickup truck, and so on the shadow of the pickup truck with these really bright lit areas on the carport came from this bright object that was brighter than the sun and nowhere near the sun. But you could see the angle of the shadow from the truck and tell where the object was in the sky, and it was nowhere near. And it was there for 10 minutes.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have known about it at all, except my doorbell camera said there was motion and sound outside, and I recorded it. And I looked at it, and it's wild. I've sent it to Dave. I'll send it to you.
I've only written in my newspaper column when I had it, and I haven't done it yet with UAP research, but I only probably wrote about 3 or 4 experiencer stories of the 250 articles that I wrote for New Times. But I have interviewed upwards of 100 experiencers. Okay. And to the point where one guy had a similar experience to you guys. He's got little business cards that simply said, it says, all it says on it says, hi, here's my address. I'm Bob. I recognize you from that place.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. We got about 1 minute here. 1 minute.
Okay. I have some yearly totals here for the stuff here you want. Okay.
Great. Just let me intro it the way I had it planned, and we'll go right into it.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear you're updating the book.
All right, everyone. A big thank you to Science Bob and Chris Reap for the amazing super chats tonight. Thank you to everyone who has given us a thumbs up and thumbs down and thumbs sideways. Make sure if you're brand new, hit that subscribe button because we really appreciate the support and would love for you to know our schedule because we're here every Monday through Friday. And do a little shopping at facebook.com/the SOR Vault for our store. Here we go with the second half hour. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I am Dave Scott, rocking the beard and hair as per usual while we talk UFOs all night long. I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at spacedoutradio and on Instagram at spacedoutradio.com. Science Bob and Friends continues as Bob McGwier, our resident scientist, is back with our special guest tonight, Cheryl Costa. And Bob, I got to tell you, I'm cold. I am very, very cold tonight. It's minus 27 degrees Celsius. which is minus 16 Fahrenheit. And we're going all the way down to minus 31 tonight. That's cold. That is very cool.
I hate to tell you, it's 60 degrees Fahrenheit here tonight, and it's going up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow. So I won't tell you that at all, but I will say this. Cheryl and her spouse, Linda, have both worked hard on a book that people in ufology should consider getting, called UFO Sightings Desk Reference, United States of America, 2001 to 2015. And in it is well over 100,000 sightings were put together in this statistical analysis and other things in this desk reference. And they point out these trends and so forth. And it's really one of my favorite books in ufology. So when I got into all of this, I read Richard Dolan's National Security State books, and I read this book. And I've always wanted to talk to Cheryl, and tonight's my first real chance of doing it. So we heard a hint in the last half hour that Cheryl and Linda are doing an update to this book. So from 150,000, which she was citing before, what do you got coming up in the new book? How many sightings will it actually cover?
Well, actually, we're taking a slightly different track. The new book, 2001 to 2020, a 20-year sample, 21st century information, will do pretty much like what we did with the 2017 book. It's going to be laid out a little differently. In 2017, we had 121,000 sightings in the book. Okay, and we broke it down by the United States, by overview of the United States, by regions, and then we broke it down into individual counties. And that was the deal. There was about 2,500, roughly around that, counties represented of the 3,200 counties in the United States. Now, because I was out there doing speaking at conferences and things, I had to keep updating the information. So I was always updating the database every year. So through 2001 through 2018, the total U.S. total was 146,740 sightings. And then, as we all know, the sightings started going into the toilet in 2018, falling off. Everybody was crying and screaming all over social media. See Space Force chase the aliens away. They got bored with us, whatever. I kept trying to tell people this was part of a natural cycle. It goes up and down over about a 7 to 8, 9 year cycle. And so I went on hiatus during 2019 to work on some other projects. And I got a phone call in the spring of 2020 from George Knapp at KLAS out in Las Vegas. And he said, "Hey, Cheryl, my phones are ringing off the hook here. There's a lot of sightings. Could you look into it?" So I did real quick. And I looked at National UFO Reporting Center since it's online for the first quarter of 2020. And I dropped them into a spreadsheet that I already had from the rest of the last 18, 19 years. And it was the best year since 2014 for the first quarter. So I started loading the numbers in. And then by the end of the second quarter, I was dropping numbers in again. And I have a model I built. Would you believe that? Science Bob, you'll appreciate this. I built a model. And I was able to predict at the end of the first quarter within about 10,000 where it was going to be. Okay. And I thought it was going to be somewhere between 165,000. The 20 years would be out 165,000 to 175,000. By the end of the second quarter, I got it within plus or minus 2% of 168,000. Well, that was the predicted model. The actual number rang out at 167,630. So I'm very pleased with the accuracy of the model.
That is terrific. So, all right, so you've got a model, and of course that's just taking the numbers and figuring out what curve would fit. One always wants to take those kinds of things and say, I think I have a hypothesis of what is behind this model. So what can you tell us?
We discovered with the 2017 book that UFO, most people used to just knee-jerk and say, well, it's population, okay? Especially when you have states like California being the number one state. But the number 2 and number 3 states, number 2 is Florida, number 3 is Texas. They're both around, in the 2018 numbers, they're both around 7,000 sightings for the 18 years. Problem is that Texas has twice the population of Florida. So it's not always driven by population. So we found out by looking at different elements of the data, monthlies, times a day, all kinds of stuff like that. We discovered it was driven by sightings are driven. Remember, it's as much about human activity as it is the UFOs, driven by population, temperate weather, and leisure time. Okay. And after the book came out, we developed an algorithm and was able to determine hours of darkness as well. 68 to 75% of the sightings happen between 5:30 and 5:30 in the afternoon and 11:30 at night, and most of that happens between about 8:30 and 10:30 at night. Okay, the hours from 1 o'clock in the morning down to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon only represent about 24% of the sightings, which was eye-opening.
Oh, that's really fantastic. So,
go ahead.
No, keep going. I don't want to interrupt you. I thought you were at a pause.
No, we discovered something funny though. After you come off at 1 o'clock, there's a bump around 5 o'clock in the morning, and we attribute that bump to the first walking of the dog and the first smoke. Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And if you look at certain other places, certain other activity, you see these things. I'll give an example. If you did Clark County in Nevada, there was a bump at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 4 o'clock. I sent that chart out to a MUFON investigator out there, and he said, well, that's when the clubs let out. Again, leisure time. They're coming outside. They're in the parking lot, getting in the car. Hey, wow, look at that.
I'd have never thought about that. Never thought about that.
Well,
that's fabulous.
Another piece of support we had. I was talking at the Arkansas conference, and I couldn't understand why there was a bump at 3 o'clock in the morning. And after I gave the presentation, 12 men in big suspended jeans came up to me and said, well, we're all chicken farmers, and that's when we're prepping our birds to go to market.
Oh, that's hilarious, Cheryl.
Who knew? You know, there's a major dip in the hourly chart about between 7 and 9 o'clock in the morning drive time. You're in traffic. Who has time to report a UFO sighting? You know, and so there was a lot of little things like this. We're still eking things out of the data, and we found out that those hourly charts vary from state to state. Okay. The other thing we found out, people came to me and said, well, what about the Wednesday effect that John Keel came up with?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the problem was John was the first guy to do some of this statistical stuff. Okay. And he had about 800 sightings. Problem was they were somewhat weighted to the southwest of the United States. So it was skewed a bit. And they came up with the Wednesday effect. Okay. Well, we found out that 76% of the states in the United States, it was actually Saturday night. Saturday was the day with all the sightings. But if you move down into some of the southern states, some of that other percentage there was southern states that had it on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Okay. Absolutely nobody had a peak day on a Monday. It's Monday Night Football. Who's going to report UFOs? But we found a lot of little goofy things like that. Since that time, we've dug deeper into the data, and we found a lot of weird stuff. We have found out back during the lockdown in March, I had nothing better to do, and I attempted to start writing a 5-book series on only the shapes. One book on like the triangle type, diamond shape type things, one on circular ones, one's on squares, one's on the exotic shapes, all that kind of thing. And the problem we ran up against is that people don't spell the name of their cities right. And that stopped me. And that's in August, we actually sat down and started correcting the legacy database spelling. And it was a 6.5-hour effort, 3 days a week from August to and first week of January. It was
okay. Do the typical sightings in the database give you enough geolocation information that you could try some autocorrecting algorithm?
No.
Oh, that's
No,
too bad.
none.
So the lat long is not there.
It is there now.
Ah, okay, all right.
Okay,
Yeah,
and so
with lat long, you can look up what cities are nearest to the spelling that's in the database and may be correct.
I couldn't use it for that. What we used was a zip code list.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
And we had to go record by record to make the fixes because people don't always enter in the city. They'll say near Bojangles Junction or something like that. They put something in. They put an extra space in there. The automation. I was an IT specialist. I could have written scripts. This was so complicated. It was easier just to do it old school and just go record by record and correct it. But it allowed us to also put in lat longitude for the city the city it actually was, and the zip code, or at least the route zip code for the city in that the sighting was.
That's terrific. Dave?
In regards to the statistics that you take, and did you break it down versus age categories, say 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30? Did you break it down by what's the word I'm looking for? Did you break it down? Demographics. And did you go with race? Did you go with sexuality as well?
Everybody asks me that question. The databases do not have that information. The national databases do not have the information. If they do, it's not at a level that I'm allowed to have.
Right.
And there was a MUFON when we were doing the data back in 2016, we were crunching the book. They had all kinds of fits about that. I was gonna out people, and I said, we're doing statistics. All we were really interested in is we were interested in city, state, shape, and time, date and time. That's all we were interested in.
So you completely redacted all personally identifiable information.
Never had it to begin with.
Good.
And the first thing I got rid of was the sighting information because I didn't need it.
Right. That's really interesting. Okay, so we know some of the statistical categories that you covered in the older desk reference. What new things are you looking into?
Well, I wanted to do this magnitude study. And when I started pulling data this time, I pulled the data. I asked MUFON for a report all the way back to 1960 because people came to me when my book came out. Why didn't you go back 40 years? They said to me. And the idea behind our book, Linda wanted to do a census of 21st century stuff because every time you crawl through the literature online and social media and things, everybody's talking about stuff that happened 50 years ago or 60 years ago. And we said, let's do something modern. There's tons of stuff going on now, more than ever, So that's why we did the 21st century. That was the niche that we dug out. And but in this case, we wanted to do a magnitude study, and we went back and we requested the information from 1960 to 2000. Okay, and that it ended up amounting to 80,492 sightings over that 40-year period. Okay, actually, the chart data, when they did it, they didn't stop it at 2000. They went all the way to 2020. So that 80,494 actually is from 1960 to 2020. It's a 60-year window. Okay, and we did a plot. I sent it over to Dave, and we did a plot of what we call a day-by-day chart, basically January through December for all those years. Okay, but we did it in one chart, and it's relatively flat, except for some occasional spikes on certain days over cumulative days. Another thing we discovered was when we do one of these 365-day charts, if we do it for 1 year for, say, one state, and you'll be looking at, we'll say like Indiana, they have maybe 3 sightings a week, maybe 1,300 for the year, that type of thing. But every now and then you'll see something spike up. So they average like a sighting every other day. Suddenly you look at their thing. I'll give you an example. 2008, April 16th, 2008, there were 60 sightings suddenly above the national baseline, which is about 15 to 20 sightings per day nationally. Okay. Suddenly there were 60 sightings on that one day. We drilled down through all the states were onesie twosies. We drilled down further. Indiana had 25 of those 60. So we drilled down even further, and we found out it was split between 2 neighboring counties and 12 municipalities.
Oh, dear. A cluster.
Well, we've identified 150 clusters in the United States in that time window of 2001 to 2018, and nobody is interested in them. Not television producers, not MUFON investigators. Nobody's interested. And the only way you would know about the cluster is if you had the information of both databases at your command.
Okay, so give us some of the restrictions or the agreements or whatever you have to do. How do you enter into an agreement with MUFON and NUFORC to get access to their database?
Well, NUFORC's publicly available. Okay, but you just can't use the raw data for one, because they've got the international data mixed in with the national data, and it skews things terribly. If you're just doing a quick snapshot, you can just copy the things off their webpage. But if you're going to put them into my database, we have to clean out the international stuff, and they're pretty obvious what they are. MUFON, because it was a privately available private base, I had to go originally I had to go through a whole bunch of hoops, and nobody would work with me. Finally, Linda got on the telephone, and she's an executive, and she got on the phone, did a executive speech, and I had a spreadsheet in about 20 minutes. Funny how that works, right? But the boss got it, and that was how it worked. These days, since that first book came out, MUFON's always been very nice to me at that point. I call up the director, tell him what I'm working on. He tells the right guys, and they send me whatever I'm asking for. But again, all I'm ever asking for is the date, the time, the state, the city, the state, and the shape. That's all I ask for.
Okay, so that's so, and now there's a trusting relationship. That's really what you are after,
yes,
and you got it.
Yeah.
Dave?
We have a question coming from the audience here on YouTube for Cheryl, and it's from Major Lee, and he is asking, is it possible using the data to track an individual sighting across adjacent states?
We tried to do that early on, and there was only a couple of situations where that information was usable. You have to give an example. Say there's 5 different sightings going across 3 different states. Unless somebody calls it a flying saucer, somebody calls it a light in the sky, somebody else calls it a sphere, you can't correlate it. And most of the sightings in the databases are done by trained observers, so there's not a good way to be able to do it. I had 2 cases when I was a journalist where someone said, hey, they had a sighting down on Long Island. It was seen again in the Catskills. It was seen again over central New York where I live, and we literally was able to, over 2 days, we were able to go back through and track it from Long Island all the way up to Toronto. Okay.
Oh wow.
And it was a small formation of like 5 or 6 of them type of thing, and it was consistently reported. But can we track them across the country? Not really.
Yeah, too many sparse areas.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's just the scope of the sightings. The people are not all reporting the same thing. There's no coordination. It's not like people are out there tracking it. They aren't. They report it, and then if they don't get the time right, it doesn't match up with the other people's reports, things like that. We tried doing it when I was a journalist, and it was impossible.
Right.
Yeah, because unless you have a continuous camera on it, it is going to be very difficult to say that's
agreed.
The same one.
Now, where we were able to do the tracking with this one I told you about from Long Island up to Toronto, we literally had phone calls and we had emails telling us about it. And that forced us to go in. Now, here's the problem. MUFON data I was able to get almost immediately because I had access to CMS. I could go in there and look almost instantly over the next day or so. The NUFORC data, we had to wait 2 weeks for them to update their database. They only do it about every 2 weeks. So it wasn't like I could go in and get a model. Remember, statistics is you're always working in the past.
Okay, so from the Atlantic coast states all the way up to Toronto, tell us about that particular sighting. What were you able to determine about what the people were actually seeing?
Like I said, a bright formation of about 5 to 6 objects, and they were seen from we had reports from the Long Island, New Jersey area. We had them up in the Catskills, up around Liberty, New York. We had them up in central New York, right here where we are. In fact, it got one of the rare cases. It was reported in the newspaper. And then there was reports up across western New York, heading down towards the Buffalo area, and then into Toronto. The whole sighting started around 9:30 and ended up in Toronto about 10:30.
Did you get a consistent story about the shapes?
No.
Okay.
Almost everybody said it was just bright lights in the sky, and understand there was a certain amount of overcast to it, so people were just seeing the bright glowings in the thing. Locally here in Syracuse, it's overcast this time of year, and that was the time of year, and they could see the bright lights through the mist, but that's about it.
Dave?
I'm just amazed that that you could follow it that quickly in that much of a line. I mean, that's just amazing to me. As we got about 1 minute to go here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour on Science Bob and Friends with special guest Cheryl Costa. Cheryl, the sightings that you were focusing on, were you able to determine whether there was more in the west compared to the east, or vice versa, north versus south?
That's complicated because one thing, we have the weather problem. The temperate weather issue. We didn't even know that existed. We had done a plot when we were working on our 2017 book. We did a plot, and that had months of the sightings by month instead of just by year. And some of our upstate New York researchers said, well, that's a dumb chart. And we almost didn't put it in the book, but it ended up when we cranked them. I wasn't really looking at them when I generated them. I gave them to Linda. She was putting the book together, and she said she finally looked over her terminal one afternoon and said, "Did you notice that there's a latitude difference with the monthly charts?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Up in the northern charts, the spikes in July and August. You get down to the middle level states like Virginia across the country, it starts flattening out. You get down to the deep southern states, it's statistically flat and looks like a picket fence." And
let's hold it right there, and we can continue there when we come back from the break. Science Bob and Friends happens the second week of every month, usually, depending on how the calendar breaks down. But we absolutely love it when Science Bob is here. And tonight's special guest, journalist extraordinaire, Cheryl Costa. We're talking UFO statistics all night long on Science Bob and Friends on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear.
All right. That was a good half hour.
When we come back,
yep.
Ask me about latitudes.
Great. I'm going to ask too. We did not get to the analysis that I wanted you to do, but that's okay. That was a great half hour.
I'm just going to run my dogs out. I'll be right back.
And let's do the latitude.
We debunked that 37th parallel stuff.
Oh, good. That's actually good, because Metnick did a good job of writing a book, but I just didn't buy into it.
He cherry picked it because
I'm sure he did.
We were in the middle of writing our book, and when that book came out in 2016, and we really didn't have time to go look at it, and we certainly didn't have lat lawn information, but we took a quick look at a map, and we saw where the 37th parallel went. And there were a lot of southern states, very, very low, lackluster states for UFOs reportings. And so our gut instinct was, unless you go through a major city, that's where all the numbers are going to be. They're cherry picking where, oh, yeah, we had one here, and they're all along the 37th parallel. Our gut instinct was it was going to be up around 40 or 42. So in 2018, when I was cleaning the data up to put in the database, I went ahead and added latitude information to it. Okay, and we quickly found out there were 12 other latitudes, mostly in the north, went through the Great Lakes and all that kind of thing, that had far more sightings than the 37th did. Okay, well, there were all these trolls coming back. Oh, we won't believe it until you do it to the whole database. So I have done it to the whole database, and it still holds up. Okay.
Yeah, but people really don't want to hear about statistical sampling methods where you can do it with a random sample from the database. They want you to do all of it. Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, that was the frustration. They won't believe the numbers. There's this anti-science view. And they look at the numbers that I'm doing. And Linda and I never set out to tell you they were aliens. We never set out to do that. Our objective always was, we want to study the phenomena. The first step in the scientific process is gather data, right? And so we gathered data. We were studying the phenomena of UFOs. We don't know who drives them. We don't know where they're from. We don't know what their power sources are. But we can tell you where they are, where they're not. Okay, and when we come back, I can tell you about where they are. Okay.
Good. So why don't we do where they are and then a conservative estimate of how many of the total you go through how you do the analysis in your own mind of the total, how many should be taken really seriously. Go through that analysis and how you do it.
Oh, my formula. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, let me crank that right now because the numbers just changed.
The methodology so people understand it. That way they can argue.
Okay.
Arm them. That's what we're trying to do is arm them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know if he shared anything with you. Did he share it in the charts I sent you?
No, he has not.
Stand by. You got your chat turned on?
Yes.
Stand by. Okay, there's two I'm going to send you. One's going to be PDF. There's that one. Okay. Boom. The other is going to be a graphic. This is the one I can't do all the charts I normally do because I've got the database torn apart, but I was running an algorithm tonight and I was able to do the year-end totals. There it is right there for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a nice chart.
Okay. Now, if you open up the PDF, that's the 60-year study, and this raised so many questions for Linda and I and a couple of other people that I shared it with. You're only about the seventh or eighth people to see this. Okay, we have not shared this with very many people. We're going to actually take the time to go back into the New Fork data and do the same thing. Add up the last 60 years. Now,
well, what I see are these spikes at what looks like nearly regular intervals.
Yeah, and guess what? They're on the 1st and the 15th of the month.
Uh-huh.
At least the ones that are on regular intervals. There are some other. That's what everybody says. Payday, shopping day, whatever. We think there's something else involved. But if you go back to our formula of population, temperate weather, and leisure time, that works with that number. But we're not. There's something else going on there. What we're going to do is I asked MUFON to give. I didn't take shapes when I was doing this data. I just wanted date and time.
Yeah.
Hold on, guys. We got 30 seconds. Big thank you to Steric, Science Bob, and Chris Reap for the super chats tonight. We appreciate the love and the support here on Spaced Out Radio. And please give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. And don't forget, if you're brand new, hit that subscribe button. A great way to support what we do on this show is by going to do a little shopping at facebook.com/the SOR Vault. It's a great way to get your swag going on. And here we go.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate earning your listening ears. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Decimestrial. Decimestrial is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with Science Bob and Friends. Our resident scientist here at Spaced Out Radio is Dr. Bob McGwier, formerly of Virginia Tech University, and our special guest tonight, one of the top journalists in ufology, Cheryl Costa. We're talking UFO statistics all night long. Welcome back, group.
Oh, happy to be back. So, Cheryl, you've been teasing us with some numbers, but I think that there's interesting things that we should go over. Like, you have Metnick's book about the 37th parallel, and I think probably you've done some analysis on these latitudes and have something to say about all of that. And after that, let's go over how you arrive at a number so that people are armed when they are arguing with people about whether these UFO sightings are real or not. So how do you arrive at a conservative estimate of how many should be taken very seriously? So let's do the latitude stuff first and then do the serious number second.
Okay, the latitude thing. Back in 2016, when the book came out about the UFO superhighway, was the 37th parallel. Linda and I were deep into working on our book, and we really didn't have time to go look at what they were talking about. But our gut instinct was, we took a quick look at a map one afternoon and saw where the 37th parallel went. And we knew already that those particular southern states were pretty lackluster for sightings, okay, unless the 37th parallel went through a major city. Okay, so we didn't really think it was a heavy hitter. We had a sense that the serious numbers on for latitudes was going to be up in the 40, 42, 43, 45 range, up through the industrial Northeast, going through the Great Lakes. Here's a little trick most people don't know. One night I was on a radio program, I had my book open in my lap, and I hadn't even really noticed this, that all the states that actually touched the Great Lakes had UFO sightings in the many thousands, okay? 3, 4, 5,000. You move 2 states away and those numbers fell into the low hundreds. Okay, so there is an issue with water. We did a study in New York State that 70% of the UFOs are near a major body of water, whether it's the Hudson Valley or Lake Ontario. We studied down through the entire St. Lawrence Seaway, that type of thing. There is an issue with water. Now, can I tell you about USOs? No, I can't. But that was the deal.
Oh, that's really terrific. Yeah, so, I read the 37th parallel book, and I went, something about this doesn't feel right. And I'm glad to hear your analysis, given that you've had access to all these reporting databases, and says it's a little bit different than the book depicts it.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so let's say you've got 160 or 70,000 sightings. Let's arm people with how one can calculate to say, not all of these are going to be great. How do you, in your own mind, cull it down to a number that says, if I concentrate on this many, I've got plenty of stuff to actually look at that might be really, really seriously good sightings that have lots of really good information and might actually yield something?
Okay. The way I do it is, Dr. Valet, very, very smart guy on UFOs, says 80% is noise, 20% are something special. Okay. The MUFON guys say 70% is noise, okay, based on their work, and 30% is something special. Linda and I took a different approach to it, and we took the approach that a lot of sighting, a majority of the sightings out there is a light in the sky. What can you determine from that? So we went with the idea of exotic shapes, things that were non-aerodynamic shapes, and they were 30% of the UFO shapes.
I like it.
We went with the non-aerodynamic things, including we took all the cigar shapes. It could be a commercial airliner, all that kind of thing. We took all that stuff out. In fact, we even took out the triangle, because every time I wrote a story about triangles, 50 people emailed me and told me, oh, it's a TR3B, Cheryl. So I even took that one out. But the bottom line is the exotic shapes were 30%, about 32%. So we use that number. So here we go. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do this on the fly with you.
Good.
Okay. The 167,600. You're gonna hear them first here, guys. So here we go. Okay. Times 0.3 for 30%. Okay. That leaves us with 50,289. Okay, let's divide that by 20 years, since we have a 20-year sample. Divided by 20 years equals 2,514. We take the 2,514. Let's divide that by 12 months. And 12 months gives us about 209 per month. Okay, and if we take 209 per month, actually it's 209.9, so let's just call that 210. Okay, and if we take 210 and divide it by 50 states, I'm going to call it 51 because we count the district. Okay, 51, 210 divided by 51, that gives us, four per month, which works out to one exotic. And if all states were equal, and they aren't, but if all states were equal, every state in the last 20 years has had one exotic sighting a week.
So look, the bottom line is this. There's not enough budget in any UFO organization to even come close to doing credible work on all of those sightings. The federal government might have enough money to do it should they decide to levy tax, take part of the tax dollars and apply it to doing this.
And do it badly,
etc. Because they're already going to do it badly because this UAPTF stuff is just falling apart. Okay, but what it means is there's more than enough data to do really, really great work if we had the resources to do the great work.
I would agree. One of the biggest problems is that, the first book, the amount of work we did in that first book, I was going to do that for a master's degree. And the pushback I had at the college I was at, where I'd been accepted into 2 different master's programs, they said, well, that would be problematic. You can't do a thesis on a research thesis on something that doesn't exist. That's a quote from the chair of the master's program. So I didn't do that. I dropped out of the master's program and I went and we wrote the book and did our own research. Now here we are almost 5 years later. Here's where this is going. We're going to be producing the next data book, which will have the United States and state by state drilled down to the county level data, like we did with the first book. Okay. Mm-hmm. We refer to it as Project Pink Book because it will have a bright phosphorescent pink cover you could flag an aircraft with. Okay. And the dedication will be to women researchers. Okay, Linda and I caught a ton of flack when we published our book, and that wasn't fair. So we're dedicating this one to women researchers. Now, here's the other hook to this thing. We have our data now refined down to the municipal level. So we're going to publish. We have a rapid production process for doing this. We're going to publish 50 books, one for every state in the union, that drills down to essentially the same information of the data book, except strictly for that state, and it drills down to the municipal level for every single state. We're going to do 5 books associated with shapes. Okay, and now that I did this magnitude study, we're probably going to do 2 more. In essence, we'll probably, over the year, we're going to publish 60 books of UFO statistical research. It will be the largest compilation of published UFO data in human history.
Oh, that's fabulous. It's exactly what's needed. Look, we've got SCU, which is a loose confederation of scientists and other people that are interested. And really, they need data. They need data to help guide.
They laughed me out of the organization.
You're kidding me.
No, they laughed me out of the organization. First time I put up a chart, it completely tore it apart. And I said, fine, I don't need to be here if you're not even going to let me present to you. Okay. My argument, by the way, with this 50, 60 books of stuff, I'm going to go to my my state university here and say, this should be my PhD, guys.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
That would totally work. Totally work.
Dave?
Cheryl, out of all the sightings that have been recorded that you have done statistically, and I may be going a little bit too deep into this, but have you looked into the type of craft that are being seen?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Ooh.
Oh, my goodness.
Ooh, now we're getting somewhere.
Yes, we are.
Let's get into a little woo here.
Please. Okay. Do you want to know the thing that's the most regularly scheduled flight? The UFO that is the most regularly scheduled flight, and nobody even talks about it.
Well, we're waiting with bated breath.
Okay. Dr. Valet one night was with George Knapp on Coast to Coast, and he was talking about how he got off on a tangent about changing shapes. Well, I always thought changing shapes is just somebody couldn't figure out what they were looking at, but he described them and explained, you get your equipment on them and you thought you saw a square and it's a circle now, or it's a triangle now, or it's something else. I personally have, coming from the military, say, wow, that's a hell of a stealth system that it's probably got an AI that could read your telepathy, knows you're looking at it, and it gives you the either projection to your head that it's just something different, or it has the ability to holographically appear to be something different. So I went out and studied them one day. I was still writing columns, and I went and pulled them up. There's only about 75 to 120 of them a year. Almost dirt. In fact, if you were to plot all the shapes together just for a yearly curve, using a curve, the line for the changing shape is barely off the bottom of the graph. It's that small. Okay. Up to 2018, and they were only about 2,500 of them. Okay, cited. But when you plot it out a certain way, you start realizing it is so regular you can set your clock by it. Regularly scheduled flight.
Wow.
Okay, and nobody wants to hear about it. I tried to show it to a bunch of people on a particular social media group, and the first pushback I had, well, it's not a trend, Cheryl. It's only 100 of them a year. Who cares? That's the anti-science dunderheads you're dealing with.
All right. I gotta ask, where's this flight coming out of?
I don't know. We don't know yet. I've never plotted it back to the location because, again, remember I told you the cities weren't spelled right?
Right.
I didn't have that longitude. I do now. Okay?
Oh, this is going to be fast.
And the only reason why I asked that is for a number of years out of Nevada, what they thought was the replacement to the SR-71, they were recording, I believe, once a week on Thursdays, almost a 1.1 to 1.3 earthquake coming out of Nellis Air Force Range right across through California and over the Pacific Ocean.
Right. Okay.
And I believe they thought that was the aurora.
Yeah, it might have been. I won't know until I get the database put back together. Right now, it's in pieces. I've got the 2020 and 2019 data out separately to work on it. I just finished cleaning up the 2001 to 2018. That is something I'm going to look at. Now, one other thing I can tell you about this is I discovered last spring during the lockdown. Again, I couldn't go further with it, but at the time. But I've discovered that some shapes have seasons. They're available only in the fall. They're only available in the winter, or they're available winter, spring. I can't tell you which ones off the top of my head, but I noticed there were seasonal differences with certain exotic shapes. And that's something we hope to plot out for people. And look at what states they're in and all that stuff. And by the way, I got longitude information in the database now, and we can do a little bit of plotting that way. One of the plots we plan to do is, you remember that thing there with the 37th parallel, that type of thing. We have a graph of, how many UFOs are seen on all the latitudes in the continental United States. We're going to also do it for longitudes as well. How many UFOs on this longitude, that type of thing.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Cheryl, so I recall you're having written a blog that was the UFO Comfort Factor. How close is too close? On average year, over all the time you've looked, how many aerial close calls have there been where it was really, it was really interesting because the pucker factor went way up? Yeah.
I've heard some stories, and it's more the experiencers that are the ones that tell you this stuff. A quick little thing about experiencers. I used to believe all the stuff I saw on the upper cable channels, I got probed, that kind of stuff. And I went to a particular conference, and I had press credentials, so they didn't want me in there. The second year I went there, I quite literally begged the psychologist to let me come in. I said, I want to learn. I won't out anybody. Now, she said, okay, go ahead, come tomorrow. And it's like an AA meeting about 7 o'clock in the morning at the conference. And I went there with my spouse. We both went in there, half expecting to meet 25 or 30 people crying in their coffee they got probed. We get in there, it's 175 people, and the meeting has all the energy of a tent revival. And everybody was up and pumped, and those folks up there that come here and visit us are cool. That was the flavor of the whole meeting. Some of those people told me some stories about up close and personal with the actual UFOs that were in my own words, hair curling. I can't go into details without my notes, but that's the deal. The other thing we see too, I wrote a couple of stories about this. There are people, there's also the situation where the ET seems to be able to like come through like a little portal. Instead of a ship coming here, there's a little portal. They seem to come out of your closet, type of thing, or come out of your wall. And I wrote a couple of stories that were very similar to that, where I interviewed the people, and they told me a pretty incredible story. And so that's the kind of goofy stuff. Now we're getting into real serious woo-woo.
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah, it's goofy, Dave.
Well, just in regards to the craft and the shapes that we're seeing, you mentioned that they are coming by at certain times of the year, certain different crafts. So does that mean, and I hate to go full on woo here on a science type show, but does that mean that, let's say that black triangles are mainly seen during the summer, but not in winter or fall? Or are we seeing more cigar-shaped objects in spring and wintertime comparatively to summer? Discs the same way, the boomerang shapes, because for a lot of people who are trying to disseminate what they're seeing, they may not know the anomalous side of everything, but they know what they saw by the shape of it.
It's all of that. That's what we're trying to get to. And we decided to hold off until we had the next 2 years worth of data, which we now have. And in about 3 weeks, over the next 3 weeks, I hope to put the database back together And then once the database is together, I have to spend another 2 weeks putting the algorithms that I wrote back into the database. Okay, Bob, that's one of the secret sauce of my database is we've written some very specific algorithms that help us process the data a certain way. And that's been the problem. I've had people ask me for my database, and I said, my lawyer told me no, because we got proprietary stuff in there, you know. I mean, I'm all for sharing in science, but I've had a dozen half a dozen PhDs and about a half a dozen PhD candidates want my database. Why am I going to let them trump my PhD?
Yeah, get yours first.
Yeah, that's my flavor.
We got 2 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Science Bob McGwier with special guest Cheryl Costa tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Cheryl, in regards to the sightings that people are seeing and the shapes, I'm questioning the time of day this is happening. Did you break down the time of day in the statistics, morning compared to night and daytime sightings?
Yeah. Because like I said, the daytime sightings were only about 24%. Okay, of the stuff, and I had a lot of hate mail on that. Oh, well, we see them all the time, you know, that kind of thing. But where we verified it was we went with the Alaska data. Okay, daytime, May, June, July is white nights up there, and their sightings go into the toilet during those 3 months. Okay, and I sent a chart up to one of the investigators up in Alaska, and they backed it up. So this hours of darkness thing is a big deal. Now, we haven't compared hours of darkness against shapes, which we haven't done it yet. We want to. There aren't enough hours in the day to get all these things, but we've had these questions. People are asking them. We're going to generate these charts, and we may do a separate report book on just that. Now, there's another thing. Remember I was telling you about that thing with Indiana, that if we do one of these day-by-day charts that start with January and goes to December for 1 year, and you got all these funny little spikes and a little baseline. You know, we're gonna do in the individual state books. We're gonna do, we call these event windows. We're gonna do the 12. Actually, in this case, it's not 12. It's 20. We're gonna do the 20 event windows for every single state. So we can show them, here's your baseline from year to year. And, oh, by the way, a couple of years ago, you had this spike of 60 in 1 day or something like that, you know. And so we're going to be dropping a whole bunch of mysteries on a lot of people's laps when those books come out.
Perfect. Everybody, hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour as we take a break from Science Bob and Friends. Dr. Bob McGwier, award-winning journalist Cheryl Costa, our special guest, as we continue on with UFO statistics, coming up on Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we're clear.
Okay. How was that half hour?
Beautiful.
Oh, that was a good half hour. This is why we wanted to have this conversation. You personally do a really good job of relating kind of a narrative behind all this data that some people won't get by just reading the book. It helps to hear you speak about it.
Yeah. Thank you. One of the things we've wanted to do is, like people really get upset when I tell them the number one county in the United States is Los Angeles County, not the city, but the county. Mm-hmm. And Maricopa County in Arizona, which is essentially the Phoenix area. They're the number 2 county in the United States. And the number 1 county has more sightings than 40 individual states. And the number 2 county has more sightings than 36 individual states. You know, and that number is going to change slightly, but not by much. And that's really goofy. Another thing we're going to do, remember I told you if all states were equal, they're having like 4 events a week.
Yeah.
I'm going to Right, an algorithm based on the proportion of sightings that each state has for that number, and we're going to run a calculation on it, and we're going to be able to say what each state's possibility is of that 30%. Okay, instead of doing this one where I make all states equal. Okay. Now, the thing that bothers me really bad right now, I keep seeing all these people putting up articles saying Vermont and Maine are the #1 states in the country for UFO sightings, and they're using a per capita formula. And it is a lie to use per capita and say a state is #1 because a place with almost no population and very little sightings is ground zero. That is wrong.
Right. No, I would think one would want to go to a place where one is most likely to see something.
Now, if you want to go to Vermont and Maine, you've got probably that per capita thing will probably give you a better, tell you you got a better chance of being abducted up there, kind of like a Betty and Barney Hill thing out in the middle of nowhere, you know. But the thing I've learned for talking to over 100 experiencers, one guy had been abducted up by Lake George in New York State, was found about 4 counties away about a week later in somebody else's clothes and not necessarily his gender. Okay. And then they locked him up at a state hospital for a week. The state police thought he was he was off his rocker. Okay. He moved away from the Lake George area in upstate New York, and he moved into to like quite literally Manhattan. They still come get you. I was talking to Linda Napinelli, or Linda Quartel, the lady who was levitated out of the building back in late '89. I know her very well. And she says, they're going to get you. They're going to get you. Yeah, you're tagged. It's like Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom. You're tagged.
Boy, Bud Hopkins did a great job telling her story. I love reading about it. So let me take you down a path that I'm walking, and see if there's not something we can do together eventually. It's not ready now. So,
a question for you, a real quick question. If you would bring it up maybe in the next hour, I don't know what else you have planned. What is it with academia that they won't even let somebody like me come and present my findings?
We can bring it up.
I've been laughed off Syracuse University. I've tried to give the presentation to the soft sciences. I've tried to give it to the physics department. I get laughed off the campus. And I keep running into this. And I have a chance right now with the State University of New York at Albany, because they had me come up and talk to a couple of journalism classes, and it blew their. Dave, you'll love this. I was there for 2. They kept me overnight. I had to talk to 3 more the next day. I blew their socks off.
I bet.
So I'm hoping I get their physics department to sit down and talk to me.
I hear you.
But the funny thing with academia, it's this topic matter. Academia is so very stovepiped. It's almost impossible to figure out who you should be talking to at any major college. Everything's stovepiped. Everybody thinks it's somebody else's bailiwick.
We got about 20 seconds here. I do have to clarify. I did not break my my Pepsi string of not drinking Pepsi since June 1st. I do have iced tea tonight. It's iced tea, people. All right. Just want to clarify that there's no breaking of the Pepsi. Here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us on in. My name is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio, and I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with Dr. Bob McGwier and Science Bob and Friends, as Mr. McGwier, our resident scientist here at Spaced Out Radio, continues with special guest Cheryl Costa, award-winning journalist in the field of ufology, and because she's just that darn good. Bob, Cheryl, welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, it's great to be here. Cheryl, let's jump on my hobby horse for a bit. So for the last a little over a year, I've been working on automation and using the really fantastic tools that are now really very inexpensive, relatively speaking, to try to automate a collection of data concerning UAPs. My closest affiliation is with SkyHub, where we're taking little artificial intelligence computers, and the team that's doing all this software work on that particular thing are working principally on having a 7x24 camera looking at all the sky with a fisheye lens, and when it sees something anomalous, it rejects all things that it knows might be there, like satellites and airplanes, and then records the video and all sorts of other data. My own part in this project is to add a form of radar that does not require you to own $1 million transmitter with a multi-million-dollar antenna to get a track on something. So I suspect that you would not mind having access to an automated database that's openly accessible by everyone, and personally identifiable information never enters that database. So the reason I'm saying this is I want to increase the numbers because I agree with you that between, say, midnight and 6 a.m., the largest portion of the area, local time, is going to be asleep. So, but if you have a camera that's always on, you can catch things that people miss, and we have done that. The earliest days of this camera running, it had an IR capability on it, and it caught these things flying over downtown Houston. I mean, it was pretty amazing. So I want you to give your comments on this kind of thing, and if you had any advice on things to do, things not to do, so that you would be helped most by trying to do statistics on that database.
Okay, two questions I have for you. When you mentioned that radar, are you talking the MADAR system?
I'm not talking the MADAR system. Okay. I'm talking because I'm not doing magnetics.
Well, then there's another technology that can use the other people's radiated radio signals and use that for reflection. I can't go into it deeper because I can't confirm or deny because.
but I can't.
I understand the technology.
Yeah, we're doing passive radar. That's
yes,
what we're
essentially
doing.
Passive radar. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to tell anything I know that's classified, but there's publicly available equipment with publicly available algorithms, and as a scientist, what I'm going to do is enhance those algorithms using things that are not classified. I'm not going to use classified algorithms which do other things. So of course, and what we're going to try to use is television transmitters and FM transmitters to try to get a track on objects.
That's brilliant, because that would be the best way to do it. One, you don't have to have the big powerful transmitter; they already got it.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, Davenport wrote about this at a MUFON conference 20-something years ago from his perch at Newfork, and it never went anywhere because at the time it was going to cost millions of dollars. Well, the little artificial intelligence computer we're talking about using is a $59 computer from NVIDIA, and the radar receiver is right now in the current form that we know works is $200, and the fanciest antenna we need is $100. So we're talking about $350 to have a passive radar that can track objects across the sky.
When we were first working with it in the middle 80s, we were doing it with a PCAT.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, I wrote a lot of code for a PCAT, but I'm telling you, these NVIDIA GPU-based machines that they cost $59.
I'm a ham radio operator. I'm very interested in what you're doing. Believe me.
Exactly. I knew you were a ham, so my call is N4HY. It's a reasonably well-known call, and I've been doing software-defined radio since with Joe Mottola since the 1980s. He went outside the quote community and wrote a bunch of papers about software-defined radio, and then I did the architecture of the flex radio things and wrote a lot of the software. So this is like right up my alley is to do this kind of work, and it has. But I'm going to tell you what people don't know is everybody's in a hurry. So am I. But COVID has been an unbelievable impediment getting the things that you need to glue together to do this so you can do a test so everybody can get in on it.
Yeah, agreed. I like what your project is. We should talk about it off air.
I think we will. I just want to make sure. But do you have can you think of anything that you could say to me that I should be aware of that you want to make sure is not done or should be done? Just any kind of input you might have. And if it's nothing, great, we can just talk later.
Off the top of my head, no. I'm about 45 minutes from going to sleep. So it's really late here in the East Coast. No, right now I don't have any ideas, but I'm going to think about this clearly. By the way, Peter Davenport has teamed up with some of the NICAP guys that are doing the MADAR system, and it's expanded tremendously over the last couple of years. And the data is automatically inputted into the Newfork database, and I actually have 2 years worth of MADAR data in my database now. I can report it out like a shape.
That's great. This Sky Hub project is incorporating MADAR, and we have, especially in Europe, because we have this Sky Hub / MADAR project that's going on in France to marry the two. Sky Hub is international, but everyone, I want to look for magnetic anomalies as much as anyone, but MADAR's doing that work. So what I wanted to do is the radar work, which no one has done, and Davenport did such a great job of writing it up, and I just couldn't stand the thought of it not being done, especially now when we have the tools. And
now that the technology is literally dime store technology.
It's only going to get cheaper. It's only going to get cheaper. Dave?
I got a question coming from our audience here, and this is coming from John, and he is asking, Cheryl, what are your preferred methods of communication for your studies?
I'm not sure what the context is.
Is it book or is it social media? You do books.
Well, okay, we have the book, but we do a little bit on social media anymore. What I do is we've got the book. We're getting ready to do another book. I do a lot of radio shows. We share things. I'm getting ready to put on like 50, 60 books. And Linda and I quite literally plan to walk off into the sunset. And I know a lot of people say, no, you won't. No, you won't. Yeah, we will. Trust me. We have some other projects. We're not getting any younger, and we have a couple of other projects we want to do. I write 3 columns now, Dave. I write a UFO column and I write 2 paranormal columns, and I just got asked to start writing a dramatic radio series. So life gets complicated, but we're going to complete this study. I really want to complete the study on the UFOs. I want there to be a major contribution of data, which everybody's been crying there's no data. Well, we're going to provide it, and we're going to provide it in spades. So.
Oh, that'll be terrific.
That'll be awesome. Awesome. Bob?
Okay. So you have, I just want to make sure that people know that you have compiled a compendium of all of the stuff I think you did for about 6 years for the newspaper. So tell us a little bit about the book UFO Beat.
Oh, okay. That was fun. The paper made a deal with me originally that I would own my stories. Okay. So when we found out the paper was going to go out of business, a bunch of the journalists started scrambling to get copies of the stuff that they had published. And the publisher said he was going to leave the website up for indefinitely. And I was able to acquire the edited versions of the art, what was actually published. But the problem was I had 4 different editors over the 7 years, and everybody stored it in a different place in the server. And we had to do some very, very fancy searches to find all of the articles. It turned out to be 136 articles that we wrote over 7 years. Actually, it was 137th. Dave, you'll understand this term. The 237th article was spiked. Okay, I was never censored, but my editor said this was around 2013, 14. It was around 2015. I wrote this article. It was very snarky in its tone. It was like, if we have disclosure, what's going to happen to us? Okay, suddenly, we're going to start having aliens on Good Morning America. We're going to have reconciliation talks with guys like Whitley Strieber and the guys that he talks to. That kind of thing. And we talked about all this. Oh, there's going to be alien perfumes. Our culture is going to be changed by this. And I wrote all this snarky stuff in the last part of the article, quite literally takes the late night ambulance chaser type article. Due to galactic treaties, if you've lost your job due to a UFO sighting, had cattle mutilated, or contact this law firm, that kind of thing. You may be due money. And the editor spiked it. And I asked him why. I said, it's very practical. It's very reasonable. He says, you've developed such gravitas as a journalist. We feel it would be demeaning to you to put a snarky article like that up. So when we put the book, The UFO Beat, together, we decided to publish that. The other cool thing is I wrote a very serious article about Billy Muir.
Oh, great. Tell us that.
Well, and it's in that book, by the way. And I wrote the article in the context that I always felt that the people who complained and debunked and said that Billy Muir was a fraud and everything, the lady does protest too much came to mind. There were too many people protesting him. Okay. And I had seen some stuff in his film footage that suggested to me as a trained video editor that this stuff was genuine. Well, I wrote this stuff up in my article, and the mail that came in wasn't so much the mail, but it's the comment section on the article. The pro Billy Muir team and the con Billy Muir team went to war in the comment section. Okay, my editors were impressed. I mean, it was hundreds of responses, and it got ugly, And so when I put that article in the book, I wrote a little addendum to it, and it says, when before the Spanish-American War, the artist Remington, who was working for the Hearst papers, was down there in Cuba, and he said there will be no war. And Hearst telegraphed him back and said, "You send me the pictures, I'll send you the war." Okay, and it's a very famous terms in journalism terms. Well, basically, my attitude was I wrote an article that caused a war of words, and as a journalist, I was rather tickled to do it.
So this begs me to ask the following question. And with that many articles, I'm sure that you have, let's call it a nuts and bolts flying saucer favorite. Pick one and tell us about it.
Nuts and bolts favorite. I would have to say, see, the problem is when people came, I had people come to me all the time and tell me the big story about the big thing that set down in their backyard or in their farmyard or whatever. And I was not a field investigator, so I didn't take those stories seriously myself because I got bagged once early on in my first year writing journalism. Somebody told me a whopper and I published it, and I had to live it down for a while. But I don't really have a really great nuts and bolts story. I guess the only thing I ever really had anybody argue with me about with the nuts and bolts. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Circle of Lights, Buffalo, 1956, I think it was. Okay. The lady said it was hovering over a quiet little, and I'm going to call it middle class neighborhood, industrial, working class neighborhood. And it was a circle of about 30 lights, okay, and it hovered and it did some little gyrations and everything, and that's the closest thing I have to a nuts and bolts article.
Oh, that's terrific, Dave.
In regards to the studies that you have done regarding the entire phenomena, have you reached out to just ordinary research groups outside of MUFON to try and get the independent statistics as well?
You mean other databases? You mean?
Yeah, because there's so many people investigating this subject, and I think of two up
yes,
here.
I have.
Okay,
I know what you're saying. Okay, I made some overtures to try and get the Canadian data. I'd made some you got a really good researcher up there in Canada, and I don't try to step on his toes, but I tried to reach out to European databases, and it was a major hoop, and I'm not funded. Okay, you know what I do, by the way? All these hours I log. I bill my time at $75 an hour. So right now, this series of books is going to it would probably cost over $100,000 of my time. So I put this much time into it. But I have reached out to some of these other databases. Some of them, they won't return my email. They won't talk to me. There's a lack of cooperation. I think they think I'm going to steal their thunder. I'm not. I ask them to share their data. Another thing I've discovered is I found that some of these independent databases had basically the same information that the MUFON and NUFORC had. They were copying some of that stuff, So I didn't want the redundancies. So I just stayed with the two major databases.
Okay, but do you think that a lot of this, and I realize this is hypothetical, but do you think that a lot of those numbers would coincide with each other?
No, I don't. The smaller, what I'm calling mom and pop databases, I can't trust the integrity. I did get one shared with me, okay, and there was Peter Davenport's people vet the stuff to some degree. Okay, MUFON investigates and vets. Okay, a lot of the mom and pop group I got a hold of, they did not vet their stuff, and it was I found the data to be pretty junky. So not that I should treat everybody like that, but I got very early on. I asked about over a dozen of these kinds of places if they would share data with me, and they pushed me away. I was a journalist. Oh, I was going to out somebody, and there were other issues. They said, so some people are very stingy with that material. It's their little fiefdom. So it comes down to that kind of thing, and I can't work with that. Either there's going to be free sharing of this stuff or there isn't. After our book came out, I had emails from professors all over the world asking me for my database. But the problem is when I asked them, what exactly are you looking for? Well, see, they wanted to get in there. They thought they'd be able to get in there and read all kinds of good stories. It always comes down to stories. And I said, no, this is pure data. There's no write-ups in there. And they all went away, because I was only collecting what, when, where, and what shape, and tracking time.
Okay, you asked me a question earlier. I want to give you an answer because it's really straightforward. You go to a university and you get in front of, say, one department's faculty, and they care about one thing, Cheryl. What part of your research or the research you're proposing can they go to a government entity, whether it's the National Science Foundation or the Department of Defense, et cetera, and get funding for it? And the answer is nowhere.
Yeah,
so they
Dr.
cannot get funding,
that,
so they're not interested.
Dr. Condon fixed that for us, didn't he? Yeah.
Yep. Certainly did. Edward Condon did more. He effectively eliminated with a few $100,000 of CIA money. He effectively eliminated all scientific research in the United States into the phenomenon.
Okay, let's talk to your audience about that. People always come to me, where's your validation? Validation comes in the form of government agencies that do research, government foundations that do research, academic teams that use government money to do research, and also to some degree before the internet, major papers of record, right, Dave? So he shut it off, and all four of those, at least the three with the money, the top three, the government agencies, none of them are doing it. None of the journals are doing it. And then you talk to the newspapers, he got out there and told them it was all putkiss back there in 1968, and all of a sudden newspapers stopped. Hell, the New York Times ended up running big chapters of that book.
And then ufology comes along, desperately needing money, and a billionaire comes along and gives all these researchers money and so forth, and everybody cries wolf. If you can't get money from government, you can't find foundations that will support the scientific research. If Robert Bigelow wants to write a check, you should do something but publish the results. Now, that's part of the problem, is Bigelow wanted to keep it all to himself. Dave?
Guys, we only got about 10 seconds here before we have to go to break at the top of the hour on Science Bob with Friends. This has been a great show so far, and I know Cheryl's getting tired because she's on the East Coast, I'm on the West, and Bob's somewhere in between, but this is absolutely fantastic radio for Science Bob and Friends tonight with Dr. Bob McGwier, formerly of Virginia Tech University. Yes, the man has his name on 20 satellites plus up in space. And Cheryl Costa, award-winning journalist in the field of ufology. We'll continue with Science Bob and Friends right after this on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear. I'll be right back, guys.
Oh,
Bob,
that was a great half hour.
I thought so too. Bob, something I couldn't say on the radio. Okay. Linda.
Okay, just remember the YouTube audience can hear us.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
No, let me say it this way. Linda worked for the National Academy of Science at that time. Okay. And she knows that they signed off on that and gun decked the whole thing like everybody else did. And the sad thing about it is when when we started seeing all this information about all our nuclear missile silos getting shut down.
Yep.
The Air Force neglected to tell Dr. Condon about that. It might have changed his findings.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, so look, the timing was rough because remember Minuteman came out under Kennedy, was deployed all over the place. So Condon was a little prior to the Minuteman being deployed, and after the Minuteman was deployed up all across the northern tier down into the wheat states and the plains, UFOs were everywhere. They were definitely wanting to figure out what we were doing in those silos.
Well, the way I looked at it from the standpoint of the primitives have a box of dangerous matches, so that was pretty much the issue. I think bottom line, and this is for our YouTube listeners who can hear all this, I think the bottom line to everything is that with all the press the topic matter is getting, we've been seeing more and more academics, kind of like SCU guys and that type of thing, are showing up on some shows like this and talking. And I've got a contact with two that are in major universities, one in New York State and one in someplace else. And one of them gave me the idea of when I published this whole big 60-book thing of literally taking it to, in my case, my state University of New York and say, guys, is this rate a PhD? Probably not. But then again, maybe it is because nobody's ever done this before. This is new science.
You have to find a faculty advisor that will sponsor the research and agree to set up a committee that can grant you the PhD after a defense. That's the way it works. You got to find a person.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens there. One of the arguments I had, one astronomer that I was talking to, he was talking about, all this invalid stuff. And I said, we're doing research kind of like there used to be a lot of the women computers back with astronomy things, and guys always took all the credit for their research. This is, we caught that kind of crap from the UFO researcher. Oh, we still get it. They say, well, you're not boots on the ground investigators. I said, that's not, there's other ways of investigating besides being boots on the ground. I don't do ticks, barbed wires, or cow patties,
I got news for you. Richard Feynman did not many fingers in a lab, but he changed the world. We wouldn't be doing this right now if Richard Feynman hadn't done quantum electrodynamics and we have these computers in front of us. Yeah, that's a stupid statement. It's boots on the ground. Yeah, look, you need. Me in particular, I've lived my life on the border of science and engineering. So occasionally I go kind of all the way over into science and publish a mathematical theorem. You can read my papers back in the Journal for Differential Equations and know that's true. But on the other hand, I've done a bunch of engineering projects all my life. Before I was even credentialed as an engineer, I was doing engineering projects. So you need all types. You need thinkers, you need people to take data and say this is interesting things in the data, and you need people to do hypothesis, which you can go with boots on the ground and test or into a lab. It's just, it takes all types. We need a great big diversity of people working on this problem.
Agreed. The biggest problem we ran up against when the first book came out, well, you can't prove it. And I said, well, you can't not prove it. But the other comment that came out of that whole you can't prove is everybody expected our research to give them the answer of this stuff. And I said, no, scientific method is gather data and start analyzing. We never set out to prove that really are aliens. This is a problem we had with the media. They kept calling me up. Who's driving them? I said, I don't know. It could be aliens. It could be government pilots. It could be the Teamsters. I don't know.
Yeah.
I said, I can just tell you where they are and where they're not.
People hate
We got 1 minute.
honest.
1 minute.
People hate honest, ethical people. If they want an answer, they don't want you. They want you to be unethical and give them the answer they want.
You know, Linda works for a college, and after the book came out and New York Times article came out about, there was some serious jealousy with some of the academics and everything. Would you believe we are shunned at the college Christmas party for the faculty?
Oh, for crying out loud!
We
That's
are
terrible.
absolutely shunned. We used to be able to go there and mingle with everybody. We are absolutely shunned.
All right, guys, hold on 2 seconds here because we are going to go back to the show here in just a couple of seconds. And thank you to Miss Pickles, Derek, Science Bob, and Chris Reap for the super chats tonight. And here we go in 5 seconds.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Thank you to everyone tuning in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. You just got to check them out at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Decimestrial. Decimestrial is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight for the final time. Science Bob and Friends happens once a month here, where we talk about the who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how of the paranormal, supernatural, and ufological. Our special guest tonight is award-winning journalist Cheryl Costa. Science Bob, it's been a great show so far.
I'm loving it. So, Cheryl, look, you are a moderator on a bunch of UFO UAP groups on Facebook. So why don't you give us a couple of them and tell us what the focus of these groups are? Some that you might say to our audience you recommend.
Well, okay. A lot of people come to one called UFO Disclosure. And it used to be pretty good discussion in there, but we've gotten so many people in there now that so much stuff gets posted. And I mean, I could probably throw away half of it in the morning, and it would still be too much stuff in there. And it's all bright colored aliens and this and that and claiming a lot of stuff. I don't have enough hours in the day to read every single one. I turn off the ones I know are absolute hooey. And then what I do, other people will come back and complain about a particular one being a hoax or being inaccurate information, and I'll get rid of them when other people read it. But some of them are very good. Some of them are bad. One of the best run groups on there was one called on Facebook. Is called UFO Independent, and the admin lives in Paris. She's really sharp. She's got a team of a couple of other good people to do this stuff, and she tries to curate the material that actually gets posted and stays in there, and she does a pretty good job of it.
Oh, that's great. That's great tips. Dave?
Your books and your studies have been read by a lot of famous people, scientists, and government officials around the world. Your books, your studies, where have they reached to? I
know the Congressional not the Library of Congress, but the Congressional Information Office has 5 copies of our book. I have been told that the Vatican has several copies of it. It's shown up a lot of different places. I've been at the UFO conferences. Had literally had somebody come up and hand me their copy, all dog-eared to pieces, and say, "Would you autograph it?" That type of thing. And so, yeah, a lot of people do use it, and a lot of MUFON investigators just swear by it because one of the things it gives them is if you're MUFON data is only about 40% of the total UFO data that between these two databases, and NUFORC's about 60%, and that model holds pretty solid. And so if a MUFON investigator is going to some particular county or something like that to do a field study, they have found that they can look in the book and say, okay, this county in this particular state has had this many of this kind of shape or this many sightings in a certain period of time. So right now he's got more in 5 or 10 minutes looking in our book versus a couple of hours struggling on CMS over at MUFON to get that information. And it's only going to be about 40% of the information. So I've had a lot of very positive feedback there. I've tried to get people who say they want disclosure. I have tried to get people to buy a copy for their local library and submit it to have it put in their collection. And what happens is there's always a bunch of trolls that come in there and shout it down and saying, oh, she's just trying to sell books. But disclosure is also getting the information available because most libraries don't have a very good UFO collection. Okay, because a lot of the modern writers don't get their material put, especially with self-publishing, are not getting their material listed in OCLC, which is the worldwide database for librarians. And if librarians don't know about your book, they're not going to buy it for their collection. Linda is a cataloger, presently in her career, and she gave us a really good catalog. And when I went to a library and handed them a copy of the book, I told them what I had a little yellow sticky on the front cover and said, there's the OCLC number. They had it cataloged in their collection within 2 days. Okay, so the hard work had already been done. But there's 125,000 libraries in the United States. About 5,000 of them are university and college libraries. And the UFO community can get their heads out of their bottom side and start pushing a book like this that gives data and ask their local library to carry it, we could start quite a movement. If I could give it away for free, I would give it away for free, but I can't. Okay. There's a goofy thing that has come up. We might have COVID slowed this whole process down, but since President Biden was elected, we're back on track for the same kind of disclosure that we might have had with Hillary, and Senator Rubio got that bill tagged in with the COVID bill, and then we got this 180 day clock ticking right now, and we're starting to see releases from agencies, government agencies and things. And, I would, if I could do it, if someone had $4,000 to cover postage and the cost of books, not my cost of books, but the publisher's cost of books, which is small, I would give a copy of this next book to come out to every representative in Congress. Like if someone wanted to throw $5,000 at it, that's what it would cost. With the cost and shipping and all that kind of stuff. And we'd be giving them the book at printer's cost. We feel that strongly about it. Okay. But there's still a lot of resistance with representatives. I know that there are congressional hearings in the works, probably after we get out from underneath the woods with our current impeachment trial and get out of the woods with trying to get the country back on its feet with COVID and all this kind of thing. But I think maybe next year we will see an effort to have some congressional hearings on the topic matter. And I've already had 2 lobbyists call me and tell me, you guys have got the only data book. Maybe are you okay about testifying in front of Congress? And that's a possibility. I don't know. Are they going to call me? I don't know. But I wrote my congressman. I wrote my senator. And the funny thing about it is I could write them and ask them a question about veteran stuff or something to do with taxes or something like that. And I'll get a letter back in 5 or 6 weeks saying, thank you. We'll look at that. We'll get back to you. Okay. I wrote my congressman and my senators, and I sent them copies of this book. And let's see, it's Schumer and Gillibrand. It's been 3 years, and I've never had a response back from them. And I wrote my congressman here recently to make sure I had to wait till I make sure he got reelected. And I wrote him a nice, polite letter and said, if these hearings come up, I'm a New York State expert. Please feel free to have me invited to the hearings.
I don't understand why Kirsten Gillibrand wouldn't, since she's on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
That's the goofy thing. Schumer's people told me, well, we never got it. And I said, well, what do you mean you never got it? He said, well, we lose things. I told him I had sent them a letter. Well, we lose letters in the mailroom all the time. I said, mine had a 2.5-pound book stapled to it. So do I need to go talk to the postal inspectors because the congressional mailroom has thievery? And, no, bring us another copy of the book. Bring us another copy of the letter. And I took it to them. They told me it was going to go down in the mail pouch to the D.C. office. Again, nothing happened. Not a peep out of them. So because we study this topic matter, I don't have representation. Didn't we fight a revolutionary war over that kind of thing? That's my attitude right now with the government. We'll see where this whole thing goes with the 180-day thing, and I know that the ATIP people are pushing it to some degree, and the lobbyists say the deep state wants this out in the open, and the only reason they clammed up is they didn't like the previous administration. So we'll see where it goes.
Well, I hope it goes somewhere. Is Maloney are you in the 18th district?
No, I don't remember my district, but I'm Catco is my guy.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
So, but the bottom line is that, we're going to have a new book come out here very shortly. I got a funny feeling somebody like the New York Times is going to do a big piece on it again. We're going to get a lot of visibility. And if we do this whole 60-book series we're going to generate a lot of media interest in the mainstream media. And that's what we're hoping to do, is generate that interest and get the buzz going. And maybe somebody in Congress will pay attention to it and say, maybe we need to look at this stuff.
One would hope. Dave, you got a question?
How do we clean up the message? Okay, this message, whether it's the statistics, whether it's disclosure, whether it's confirmation, is so convoluted and going in many different directions. Is it behooving of the UFO community to go in so many different directions when we should probably focus on winning on one target rather than numerous different avenues at the same time?
I agree. Okay, I have taken the thing, again, I do my studies the way it does. I'm working the media angle, and I have been supporting Steve Bassett, our primary lobbyist down there, and I've been taking his lead on things. Him and I have consulted each other for years. We're both winners of the Researcher of the Year award from the International UFO Congress. So we have a brother-sisterhood relationship in that regard. So I take his lead on it, and we'll see. We'll see where this goes. What I don't like is the fact that some of this, it's being couched in defense terms, that there's a threat. Okay, if we really had a threat, we would have been flattened back in 1561. In Nuremberg. These people have the ability to make any kind of war with them over within 90 seconds. So I don't see where they're the threat, except for the fact that maybe there's a new player in the game and we don't, and we're concerned about that. That means state government knows more than they're telling us. I don't know. I have no idea. Frankly, I don't think the government's that well organized and really has their finger on the pulse of it like people think they do. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, yeah, I don't believe they're organized around much right now.
They may have hidden a bunch of things, but I don't believe that they're very organized on the Men in Black kind of flavor of things, except maybe I always felt that Men in Black were basically Air Force intelligence around developmental bases, and that was it. That's all I've ever figured they were.
So, yeah, we get these hints from people that say they have testified before the Congress, like Eric Davis, that said, and others, many others, that say the active work around reverse engineering things we might have goes in cycles. They do a lot of work, or administrations change or whatever, and then they ebb and flow. And if you're in the middle of an ebb, nothing's being done and nobody's going to get access to anything. And then they would ramp up and try to do something again. And because, the technologies go through these massive transformations every, let's say, between 5 and 10 years. People don't realize 20 years ago we didn't have cell phones.
Agreed.
And we only have had digital television for like 15 years. So people just don't realize how much things change when you have these radical transformations. So I think that's kind of the cycle is, do we have new technology that we can apply to this problem that might get us further than we've ever gotten before? And I think there's that level of management of it.
The problem is we have congressmen that don't even know how to do their email. Okay.
All true.
Okay, that's a major issue right there. I'll point. I'm going to make a political statement here. We were going to the moon. Now let's just put that whole story aside for a second. That the aliens don't want us there. Okay, that's the common story. But But the program got canceled. We have 3 rockets laying on their side. Okay, that were part of that Apollo program. What it was there was a change of administration. I'm old enough to remember the change of administration. And it was a Republican administration, and they wanted to go with something cheaper, something easier to use, like a space shuttle, and that was the whole idea. And we have a similar thing here in our county. We have a really, really good helicopter airlift for state police, not state police, but the county sheriff's office to use. And they've done tons of rescue work with it. And a Republican administration came in and wanted something smaller and cheaper to maintain, that type of thing. They don't have a plan. That party, I used to be part of the Republican Party. They don't have a plan. They have no vision. And we had the technology. We were going to the moon. We had plans to build a base on the moon. We were going to do all this stuff. A new administration came in. They wanted to do it, space program, smaller and cheaper. And what we get? We got the shuttle. And now they're all retired. And now we're going to start over again with moon missions. But you know what they did? They went back to 1960s technology again to build the current moon rocket. I know people in the engineering teams at a couple of the major manufacturers, and that's what they told us to do. And they told them, we don't want to hear about any new technology. Let's just use what we already know how to do.
Well, Mr. Musk has quite a, and now the
oh yeah, he's blowing their socks away.
And Amazon, he's leaving Amazon to go pour all of his heart and soul into Blue Origin. So we're going to have the commercial guy billionaires building these rockets. They're going to take off and go on their own with or without the government.
Agreed. I agree 100%.
Okay, so people I want to answer a question that came up, which is not directly related to our topic, but I think it's important.
Sure.
So there was a recent release under FOIA of a claim that the government is working on materials that came from crashes. And so this misleading title has been all over the place. And if you actually take the time to read the actual documents, nothing like that is ever even mentioned. So it's complete. I think it's a friggin' disinformation op. Or if not, it's just dumb.
I agree.
Dave, you got a question?
I'm just listening to you guys, and it's just baffling where we're going. I mean, look, I deal with a lot of stuff on this show. I deal from everything from ET contact to UFOs to portals to secret space program and all of these craft in between. And I always get stuck on the fact, that there's a lot of claims, even subtly by people like Lou Elizondo, who come out and say, we think that might be theirs in regards to, say, the black triangles, which somehow have the name of TR3B. How do we know that we don't already have the technology and that what we see with Elon Musk, what we see with Jeff Bezos or anybody else is extremely antiquated?
Might be. It might be. It's funny. People keep telling me about TR3B. When I saw a triangle in 2012, it was 3:00 in the morning. I had just come back from running the morning edition at the paper, and it was a clear, starry night in June. And this thing went over. It started blotting out the stars, and I heard a humming sound. Okay, and I looked up. This thing is over a football field long, blotting out the stars, casually moving along at what I would estimate to be about 40 miles an hour. Okay? And it was very sharp on the edges, 2 stories, 3 stories deep, so to speak, and a football field or slightly longer. Okay? Now, there's been some suggestion that technology is essentially a blimp. Okay? Very, very rigid blimp. And are dirigible, so to speak, and that they're using some other kind of technology for the propulsion or whatever, but is essentially a dirigible. I don't know if that's true or not, but it would fit the profile of here's a TR3B, it's supposed to be jet powered and all this other kind of thing, and here's this thing moving along at 45 or 50 miles an hour. Okay, and I've talked to other people who have seen this sort of craft, and they agree. There was a guy in the 70s who saw one of these things. He was riding a snowmobile. It came over his snowmobile out in his dad's snow-covered field in January, and suddenly the snowmobile quit. Okay, and he looks up and the stars are being blotted out. And when the thing flew over the high-tension wires of one of the electrical grids, it was arcing up to it. Didn't even phase it. Now, I'm sorry, anything we would build, if that was an airplane and it started arcing up off of the high tension power wires, it would take the thing down. This was something different. I do not believe that triangle technology, the big ones, are ours. Smaller ones, yeah, okay. Something the size of a 747.
Bob, we've only got about a minute left with you and Cheryl tonight. It's been a show that has blown right on by, my friend.
It's been amazing. Cheryl, this was everything I had hoped it would be, and I only wish we had another hour, but like you, I need to go to bed.
Okay. It's always a pleasure to come on the show anytime, anywhere, guys.
Well, you know what? When we can get the brains like both of you on the show and, the comedic ventures of Dave, as hard as I try, and half the time it doesn't work, it makes for great radio. And thank you, Science Bob, for another great edition of Science Bob and Friends. We'll talk to you next month. And Cheryl, congratulations on your new book coming out with your lovely wife. And I cannot wait to have you back on to tell us all about it.
Oh, do me one favor. When do you think it will be released?
Roughly May.
Right, May.
Well, then we're going to get prepared for May to get Cheryl back on the show. It's just that simple. Just that simple. Science Bob and Friends, once again, happens once a month here on Spaced Out Radio. We'll talk to Science Bob the second week of March. Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Good show, guys.
Oh,
thank you.
Great.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we love it.
Great,
Love it
Cheryl.
when you're here. Love it when you're here. Well,
I'll keep you posted every now and then with a little tidbit. I'll drop you a tidbit like that chart. There's 2 charts I sent you, and like I said, I got to get the database together. I've got maybe another 600 lines worth of stuff to finish with the 2020 data, and then I can start putting the database back together and start putting the algorithms back in. After that, we've got a rapid production process for generating these charts and putting the book together, and we're going to start doing it.
Awesome. Sounds perfect. I'm going to let you guys go. I got to get the news ready.
Take care, gentlemen.
Science Bob, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Take care. See you, Cheryl.
Bob, reach out to me on Facebook. We'll talk.
I'll do it. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Take care. Science Bob and Friends with Cheryl Costa, the brilliant and talented Cheryl Costa. God, that was fun. That was a lot of fun, that show. And, we're lucky. Totally lucky, man, to have them here. Totally lucky. Let's see here. We got the news coming on up. It's all good, man. It's all good. All good. I just gotta find my thought of the Dave on Twitter here. And there it is. Great job tonight, Science Bob. Hey, there's Mr. Cowley. Welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley wakes up early for Spaced Out Radio. Yes. We love our Mr. Cowley around here. That may be one of my favorites every single day. Every single day. Mm-hmm. We need more clapping, people. When I clap, you guys got to clap along too. Hey, Noble Patrick, how you doing? Rollo 100, good to see you. I want cool people to join the clubhouse so I can follow them on there. Would SOR hosts accept my clubhouse invite? What is a clubhouse? What is that? Let's see here. I don't know what a clubhouse is. Are you golfing? Oh, yeah. Look at Corey Foot there. He comes in to say hello at the beginning, goes back to the Hallmark channel, and then right at the end throws in a few claps just to say, hey, I wasn't watching the Hallmark channel. I was actually listening to you, Dave. Yeah, I got your game plan there, Corey Foot. I got your game plan. Where's bench press tonight? Did you go to bed early? Oh, Mr. Cowley. I don't know why I just find that so entertaining, but I do. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. Is a seal evisceration plant? I don't get that. Strip club I could see. Honey trap? I don't know. All I know is we're going to round third and head for home here soon. 15 seconds. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, including you, Mr. Cowley. Welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley wakes up early for Spaced Out Radio. That's Mr. Cowley, who wakes up early in the United Kingdom to tune us on in. You know, perfect last name. Perfect last name. Hey, I want to remind all of you that if you have checked out our archives, you know they're free for you at youtube.com/spaced out radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes, I don't know, the financial? Yeah, let's call it the financial. Have you ever wanted to buy a ranch that allows you access to the top secret Area 51? Well, if you have a big enough checkbook, you can buy the Medlin Ranch. It's on the market. It is the only cattle ranch that is directly adjacent to the world's best-known military base. The ranch is also home to one of the most enduring stories about Area 51, the legend of the Black Mailbox. Nevada's Tickaboo Valley is beautifully sparse. It's not really a place you might think you want to raise and graze cattle. And when a tough cowboy named Steve Medlin first moved there in the early 1970s, there were no buildings, no running water, or other utilities. Medlin and his wife built their large ranching operation using their own sweat and labor to eventually have 750 head of cattle. They and the rest of the world knew almost nothing about the top secret work underway just over the ridge at a place dubbed Area 51, a designation that had disappeared from maps in the late 1970s. In the mid-80s, they got a crash course on the base when the United States Air Force seized 89,000 acres of public land without any explanation. Some of that land had been used by Medlin to graze his cattle. They say it's never going to make a difference, Medlin said. I'd like to see something in writing that says that. Medlin eventually worked out a deal with the Air Force. The military told him he could enter the forbidden base to tend his roaming cattle, but needed to call first on a radio they gave him. Now, this is also the same area where many people believe Bob Lazar worked there. But you can buy it. You can buy this property. Imagine that. The Black Mailbox. You know, I've never seen it. That's one of the things I want to do. When we're able to travel again, I want to make sure that I can head to this. I want my picture beside the Black Mailbox. So, by the way, if you're wondering how much this is going to cost, $4.5 million. $4.5 million. You know, if you can put down 10%, that's $450,000. Mortgage the rest, the cattle should pay for it. At least you hope. All right, moving on. A metal-loving musician in Tampa Bay, Florida, has made probably the most unique guitar. Yeah, you don't want to... I don't even know how to explain this. So this is what Prince Midnight did. he built what they call a Skelecaster, using both the remains of his leftover Fender Telecaster and the bones of his dearly departed Uncle Philip, the man who introduced him to the rock genre back in the 1990s. Philip died in a motorcycle accident in Greece in 1996 at the age of 28, and his skeleton was donated to a local college. After 20 years, he ended up in a cemetery my family had to pay the rent on, like literally in a wooden box, Midnight had said. It's a big problem in Greece because the Orthodox religion doesn't want people cremated. So with the help of a local funeral home, Prince Midnight had Uncle Philip's bones sent from Greece, but the plot thickened when he declined to buy a cemetery plot for Uncle Philip. No, he had other things in his mind. The bones were in pieces, and after a few weeks of showing them to his friends, Prince Midnight decided that since Uncle Philip was a metalhead, we'd turn him into a guitar. Friends familiar with making guitars from scratch warned him that a bone guitar wouldn't sound as good as one made from wood, but Prince Midnight was undeterred. He says he didn't care. Turning Uncle Philip's remains into a ghoulish guitar was a challenge. First, Prince Midnight had to weld a metal bar to the spine to attach the neck of the skeleton. Yes, then he had to make sure that the neck and the bridge would be exactly parallel so the guitar strings would freely ring. He also had to put a jack for the cord into Uncle Philip's hip bone. Ugh, this thing's gross. I'm not going to lie, this thing is gross. Although Philip's skull was included in the remains, Prince Midnight said it was damaged and he couldn't be added to the head of the guitar. Prince Midnight is forbidden by law from selling the Skelecaster, but he is having fun stringing up along Uncle Philip. Still, he admits his project caused some awkward moments with his mom. At first, she said it was sacrilegious and the work of the devil. You know how moms are, he says. But I asked her, Uncle Philip was the biggest metalhead of anybody. Where would he rather be, in the ground or shredding? And she said, shredding. Go look at the pictures of this thing. This is horrible. Absolutely horrible. I mean, oh. Yeah, Bruce Springsteen, who already was a high-profile big shot during the Super Bowl for his ad with the automotive company Jeep, well, we're now finding out, after telling everybody to be equal and be fine and love one another and don't do anything stupid, that he was arrested for drinking while driving in New Jersey last November. Yes, Springsteen, a.k.a. The Boss, was hit with 3 citations back on November 14th, 2020, for suspicion of DUI, reckless driving, and consuming alcohol in a closed area. A National Park Service spokesperson said Springsteen was cooperative during the process. The Boss has a court date in the next few weeks, which was first reported by TMZ that he was arrested on Wednesday. It was unclear why the news was revealed only now. Springsteen was pulled over that November Saturday in Gateway National Recreation Area near Sandy Hook, New Jersey. In addition to its Sandy Hook property, the 27,000-acre park includes 2 units in New York, Staten Island, and Jamaica Bay that comprise various historical spots. Springsteen and his wife Patty live mainly on the 400-acre horse farm in New Jersey to the southwest of the park's Sandy Hook unit. It's just east of Freehold, New Jersey, where he spent his childhood. Yep. So he's pretty proud of that, but he's not pretty proud of the whole idea that after getting in this Super Bowl commercial, where he probably made a couple $1,000,000 for it, telling everybody in America to come together, he goes, there is a chapel in Kansas standing on the exact center of the lower 48. It never closes. All are more than welcome to come meet here in the middle. Well, you shouldn't do that when you're drunk driving, Bruce. You shouldn't do that when you're drunk driving. All right, moving on. The 2013 surveillance video was strikingly odd. That's when Vancouver student Elisa Lam was seen cautiously stepping in and out of an elevator at Los Angeles' Cecil Hotel, pressing multiple buttons for multiple floors before she started to wave her hand outside the elevator and walked away. Lam has who lived in Vancouver, came to L.A. to sightsee. She vanished just one day after arriving at the Cecil on January 31st. On February 19th, the 21-year-old student's nude body was found by a maintenance worker in the hotel's 8-foot water tank on the roof. Now, there's still some speculation. Was it suicide or was it murder? Well, apparently, there's a new show called Crime Scene, directed by Joe Berlinger, of Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes, and Paradise Lost. Well, he wants to call this episode The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, which will be released on February 10th. Yeah, Lamb's case ignited a media frenzy and mobilized a slew of internet sleuths desperate to discover what happened to her. Her death was later ruled an accidental drowning, but that hasn't quelled the endless speculation about how she was able to get inside the tank and whether or not she had help. Lamb, who suffered from bipolar disorder, is the last known casualty of the Cecil Hotel, which was built in the 1920s near LA's Skid Row. It inspired a season of American Horror Story with Lady Gaga. Well, numerous murders and suicides allegedly have occurred there, and it was, for a short period of time, the home of serial killer Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. Well, sometimes hockey can be dangerous. More than 24 fishermen, well, let's say fishing can be dangerous, not hockey. I don't know why I said hockey. Got hockey on the mind. More than 24 fishermen were rescued from a Minnesota lake after the ice they were standing on suddenly separated from shore. Oh, that's scary. The Duluth Fire Department confirmed the incident, explaining that they had received a call for a water emergency in Lake Superior. Because, you know, Lake Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the winds of November come early. Anyways, we'll say February now. Officials were told that a large group of fishermen had been fishing in individual fish houses when the ice that they had been on separated from shore. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found the group of anglers floating on a large ice sheet off the Beacon Point housing development. Yeah, holy cow, that would be scary. One of the fishermen, Austin Balaam, said that he was standing on the ice when it suddenly broke off and started floating into the lake. We look out and everybody's running, he recalled. And then we started running towards the shore and looked, and it was probably 100 yards out already in open water. We were out there having a good time catching fish, and it just switched up that quick. You could definitely feel the wind switch on us really fast. After the arrival of the scene, rescue crews jumped into action, using boats to shuttle small groups of the fishermen into shore. Photos of the rescue crew were posted on the fire department's Facebook page. Officials also managed to rescue an additional angler who was walking towards Park Point from the water scene, and the good part about it is everyone survived. Everyone. Now, some of them lost their gear. They had to abandon hundreds of dollars worth each, but you know what? That's a small price to pay for a fisherman because life is more important, and there is always room in the budget for more fishing gear. Trust me, I know this personally. Sometimes can't afford gas, but fishing gear? Oh, always. It's an unlimited budget. 3 people who survived on coconuts for 33 days before they were rescued from an uninhabited island in the Bahamas are now in the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody. A helicopter spotted the stranded trio waving a large makeshift flag Monday during a routine air patrol. A chain of islands between Florida Keys and Cuba is where they were found, according to the U.S. Coast Guard. The 2 men and 1 woman who are from Cuba were taken to the Lower Keys Medical Center in Key West, Florida, before they were arrested Wednesday by Border Patrol officers and transferred to an ICE facility in Pompano Beach. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment. In the video shared on Twitter, Miami crew members with the U.S. Coast Guard Southeast can be seen dropping food, water, and a radio to the castaways. Weather, however, delayed the rescue until Tuesday, according to officials. The group told the rescue crew they swam to the deserted island after their boat capsized in rough waters. U.S. Coast Guard Petty Officer Second Class Brandon Murray says that their survival was nothing short of a miracle. I could not recall a time that we saved people who were stranded for over a month on an island. This is a new one for me. Moving on, I'd eat this. I'm going to tell you right now, I would eat this thing. A rare yellow lobster has been caught off the coast of Maine and has been lovingly named Banana. The University of New England said that Banana was caught by lobsterman Marley Babb and donated to the university. The yellow color comes from a pigment in the lobster shell, and the odds of catching one are about 1 in 30 million. Babs contacted the Marine Department of Marine Research after his once-in-a-lifetime catch to see if they would be interested in housing the lobster. Lindsay Ferret, a lab coordinator and chemical hygiene engineer at the School of Marine and Environmental Programs, said Babb drove 2 hours from his location in Tennant's Harbor to drop off Banana. UNE has cultivated strong connections with lobstermen, and Maine DMR Charles Tilburg says it was through those connections that researchers learned about Banana, and Lindsay was able to coordinate with Marley from there. The University of New England is sharing an $860,000 grant from the National Science Foundation with the Maine Department of Marine Resources, Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Studies, and Hood College in Maryland to study the impact that a warming Gulf of Maine is having on lobster larvae, and the success is growing in the wild until adulthood. Banana is a pound to a pound and a half lobster and settling in nicely at the university. I know where it would sit nicely as well, on my plate. On my plate. A Chicago man's unusual method of calling dibs on a parking space has gained major attention on social media after he perfected a method of freezing his pants so they stand on their own. Adam Selzer posted photos to his Twitter account showing him reserving a shoveled-out parking space using pairs of frozen pants that he shaped to stand up on their own. Reserving parking spaces is common in Chicago, with residents often using lawn chairs or traffic cones to mark spots they've shoveled. Polar Vortex fun, pants with nobody inside them. Soak a pair, put them outside. In about 20 minutes, you can form them to shape, and in another 20, they are solid. Seltzer gave the details to his recipe for pants success. And finally tonight, police in Maryland say officers responded to a report of a white tiger perched on a highway wall, arrived to find that the big cat was nothing but a life-size figurine. Yeah, they were scared for one point, but the Montgomery County Department of Police said a driver on the Interstate 270 called 911 to report a tiger, and when police arrived, they went really slowly up to it until they realized that it wasn't going to jump them, it wasn't going to eat them, but it would like a pet, because all figurines do. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What's the biggest problem with filing UFO reports? Start with John. No submittal, closing case tracking, no confidence that people with the right backgrounds will be involved, no appeal process, no ability to interview past submitters to see what experience they had. Oh wait, just one. Linda, nothing is done, just a statistic. Mark, is there an app for that? As there seems to be an app for everything else. Marty, one of our favorite veterans who listens to this show, thank you for the clown, Marty. The biggest problem with making UFO reports or any other public admission of paranormal activity is the backlash people get. It affects their careers and even their personal lives negatively. Joseph, the looks you are given and sometimes the fight you have to do just to get someone to let you file it all. Dennis, I think there needs to be more publicity for organizations that are collecting data. As well, I would like to see more centralized compendium for researchers, with MUFON in the spotlight in recent years with abhorrent misconduct. I think an overhaul or rebranding is necessary. Jay, you would either be filing the UAP report with a government body. Oh, hold on a second here. I got to show you something. Hold on 1 second here. I'm going to stop the news here for a second. And the reason why is my lovely daughter has just turned 18 years old. And she is beautiful. She is talented. And, no, come back. Oh, you're grabbing a chair. Okay, so my daughter has turned 18 years old, and I have to say, even though I'm her stepdad, I am very, very proud of who she is and the young woman she is becoming. Finally, she's a citizen because she will be able to vote. But as a dad to this lovely young woman, I am very proud of her. And the fact that she has allowed me in her life for 13 years to be someone very special to me. Lainey, happy birthday, my love. Happy birthday. I love you. Thank you. So, I'm sorry. I got a little emotional there. I got a little carried away when my daughter just walked in. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. And she's got this devious little look on her face right now as she is all proud that it is her birthday. And I'm so proud to be her dad. Very proud. And yeah, now she can vote. She can officially vote. She could join the military. She can go to university. She can do whatever she wants because she is my girl. So my present to her, we're going to go get tattooed. Her and Dad. We're going to go get tattooed. We got to go make the appointment. Thank you to everybody for playing along in the Thought of the Dave. We will do it all again tomorrow night because that's what we do around here. And you can find it on Facebook and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio. Thank you to Captain Shirk for a wonderful SOR Newswire for getting us going. And, of course, to Science Bob, Dr. Bob McGwier, who comes in every month for Science Bob and Friends. We love the show that he comes on. And our special guest tonight, Cheryl Costa. She is absolutely amazing. And I am so proud to have a good show like that tonight. But you know what? This show, though, I do dedicate to my daughter because she is just the pride and joy of my 3 kids. They're all the pride and joy, but it's her day, so we're going to celebrate. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everybody in our chat rooms tonight on Spreaker, YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Space Travelers Club, Facebook, and the Snarkers and Snarkettes hanging out on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, say it with me, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But tomorrow, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, yeah, we've got room for them too. Good night.